I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and co-owner of PurePleasureShop.com.
I'm April, VP of the cutting-edge sex toy company Hot Octopus, and I dedicate my life to the business of sex.
We are on a mission to teach you how to have hot sex, deep intimacy, and how to make your own rules for who you are as a sexual being.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Revolution.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.
You are listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Podcast, your bonus episode. And what does that mean, Chip?
Ad-free. There's no ads. Ad-free.
Is the way to be today, just today.
Way to be ad-free. Did you try to do that rhyme right there?
Yes, I did.
Noise.
So we do one episode a month that is ad-free and is a bonus episode. As you all know, if you listen regularly, we usually release episodes on Tuesdays for See You Next Tuesday. But once a month, we do an episode on Fridays ad-free. Now, why do we do this? Well, we love you and we have awesome speakers, and why not? We want to share with you. And why do we have ads? Well, you know, we put a lot of time and energy into this, and we love wine. So we need sponsors. That's not the only thing. We buy equipment. You know, we have some overhead over here. We have beloved sponsors, and it's just wonderful to offer something for you all where there's no ads, so we can dive right into the sexy things. This episode is with Tamica Wilder, straight out of Australia. I can't do an Australian accent. I'm not even going to try it.
Either. Not very good at it.
We're here to talk about sex-positive parenting and sex after kids. We'll even talk a little bit about sex after kids for folks who are in open relationships or polyamorous. We've had some folks send us emails asking questions about that. Like, how do I navigate this space? So let's dive right in. First of all, welcome, Tamica. And second of all, who are you? Introduce yourself. How did you get to where you are today?
Oh my goodness, I barely know. I if I really think back. Thanks so much for having me. Lovely to be here chatting with you. I am in Melbourne, Australia. It is early in the morning. Born and raised here. My father's actually from Milwaukee, so I have lots of cousins and stuff in the States. But I'm a somatic sexologist or somatic sex coach. And I suppose what that really means is I work with people's bodies to help them and their nervous systems come into a state of calm and presence so they can have better sex. The somatic part is really just about being of and through the body. The educational focus is around actually affecting our cells and our muscles and the proprioceptors and the breath and that kind of thing. So everything we ever learn is not just with words. It's with the body. We sit down, we stand up, we're laughing, we're crying, we're relating through the body. So to change, we need to have a focus in that regard. So it's lots of fun working with sexuality in that way, because it's I guess it's quite edgy for people to like teach their body new ways of being when it comes to their sex and sexuality. And so I'm very lucky to be able to do that. My background, I started working with teenagers and young people actually when I was quite young myself. So I've had a lot of time on the ground, like youth work and social work and that kind of thing, and facilitating programs in high schools around the country and abroad. And I suppose what started happening was I was working with really at-risk and challenging behaviours. And so I was like, I need more in my toolkit. I studied kinesiology and EFT tapping, so like meridian therapy and that kind of thing. And what started happening, I think all my life I've had a sign on my head that said, safe person to talk about really gnarly stuff with, including sex and the deepest, darkest, desires. So I'm that person that my whole life, my inbox is just like, hey, Tamica, do you think you could tell me about this? And hey, Tamica, I need advice. And I was like, there's something in this. Because then in kinesi, all of my clients were coming to me for sexual health issues. And so, I knew I had to deepen my learning and understanding in that realm and, make myself sex specific.
Oh. And that's the one that's hard for people to access. People don't know where to start. So like, I have so many questions, or I don't understand my body, or, there's a lot out there in information nowadays, but I understand why people were coming to you more so for sex. And especially if you have that, I'm a safe person to talk about these things with, is that's really big. Do you think that's like your energy or like your upbringing where you kind of raised more in like an open, because actually we're transitioning to talking about parenting, like what were your parents
yeah I think it's a combination actually, because I definitely would not say I grew up in a sex positive household. There's like loads of shame and hiding and taboo actually inside of my home, but I guess, and there could be like a little trigger warning perhaps like at the beginning of this, because a lot of people have experienced abuse of sorts. That in my childhood I was victim of childhood sex abuse with a very close family friend, and I do believe that if my household was more sex positive and there was less shame and hiding, then that's something that wouldn't have been able to happen inside of my home. And I think it was from that, and then I went on a whole kind of path of really rediscovering my body, really undoing trauma. That's part of what contributed to the sign on my head, because I had lived experience of actually how to go from completely disassociating from my body, completely disappearing, not understanding why the story is healed and I'm in forgiveness, and I'm like, oh, my mentality is fine, but why when I feel the beard, someone's beard on my leg, do I still disappear out of my body? That is like the body's holding that memory. And so it was my next chunk of work, and then studying sexological body work and tantra and that kind of thing helped like unpick. So yeah, that's kind of contributes to the sign on my head. From where I came from, then I was like what I was able to learn and move through, I suppose.
Which brings us to the first question, which is about sex positive parenting, because you brought up a great point, having that safe space to talk about experiences that you're happening when you're a child. And this kind of leads into what is sex positive parenting and why is it important? And you nailed something so crucial right there with your own experience. But can you tell our listeners, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I guess it's a thing that I often, when I'm working with parents, I do encourage them to come to their very own meaning of what sex positivity is for them, first and foremost, because there's such a spectrum. So like anyone that we work with, as you would know, it's like some people are ready to, approach a really small thing and they're like, whoa, that's so big for me. And other people are like, throw me in. So it's the same with sex positive parenting. Like I think the parents need to decide based on their values, like what do I want my home to feel like? What are some of the gnarly kind of hidden and repressed aspects of my own sexuality that I know in these moments I'm putting front and center with my kids? I'm being reactive, or I'm snapping, or I'm saying a thing that feels like a lie, or feels like, oh, this is uncomfy. Why am I doing that with my kids? I think that's where sex positivity starts. It's deciding how you want your home to feel, what you want your kids to feel. And the best reference point of that is looking back on your own childhood, like I have, and gone, what was something that I didn't really enjoy? And how would I have loved my mum to talk to me? How would I have loved my dad to talk to me? Thinking about that as an adult and going, all right, how can I then create an environment where I'm doing that for my kids? That's how you create your ethos, your own ethos around sex positive households. Instead of me sitting here going, sex positivity is this and this. And sure, there are some things, around like language in terms of what we say and don't say. If we, see our children masturbating, or those moments where the cousins come over and they're in the cupboard playing mums and dads, and you're like, I'm pretty sure they're looking at each other's genitals, and like, how do I feel about that? So we can get into some of that stuff too. But yeah, that's like my ethos around discovering what it is for you.
Yeah, I like that you're in your reference to that question of what would I have liked more of or less of, and I think it's a scary conversation, and it's not. I'm assuming you probably will say it's not just one conversation, right? It's like this ongoing conversation. A lot of people are educated, like you just have that one talk of the birds and the bees, and you're done, and you're like, no, it's like throughout the
every day,
as much as possible. So I guess the next question would be, how can parents build up confidence in talking about sex with their kids? What does that look like?
Totally. I do think that the first step is looking at your own shame and looking at what you have to work on inside of you first and foremost, and then also remembering, like, we are confident with our children when we're like, you have to eat your broccoli. We're confident that there are healthy things for them to do and not do, and say and not say. We want to embed manners into them and good nutrition and what have you. So it's the same with sex, like remembering that sex is not inherently bad. It's not inherently dirty. It's not inherently wrong or traumatic, actually. All it is a natural function of our humanness. And when we have good contact with that, I think that that's what helps our confidence, because we're like, oh, actually, I'm not saying anything bad or wrong or dirty or shameful to my kid. That's just my old conditioning. Hold on a sec. I think from that place, see it like you need to eat your broccoli, you need to eat your whatever, your milk. You can do the same with the language around sex, you know, and around self-pleasure and around your genitals and body image and sex positive. Like there's so many under that umbrella. And trialing things, like we know when our children feel uncomfortable in a moment, and reality is they feel comfortable when we're telling them to do things anyway. So there's got to be discomfort. And going, all right, there's going to be discomfort, and can I lean into this and actually be the leader of this moment instead of like shrinking back as if I was a child too, shrinking into my own insecurity and doubt. They need my leadership just like everywhere else.
I like the piece that you said. It seems like the part we've talked about this with some people we know about working through their own shame, and it's like ancestral trauma, or you know, the way we pass things down. If we don't work on it ourselves, it just keeps on going. Like I have some in various aspects, not necessarily around. Well, there's some around sex probably, and I like that you're highlighting that as a really key piece.
And I just wanted to ask, so just for my own, just to kind of reiterate something, because this is what I picked up from what you shared just a moment ago with that question, was kind of normalizing is what I'm hearing, the conversation around sex in your own home, making it like, hey, this is a checklist for the grocery store, and here's the checklist for your sexuality, your pleasure. This is what your bits are, and this is okay or normal, instead of calling it a no. That's what I'm getting from it. Because for me, it was always a no, or close your eyes if there's something bad on the TV.
Yeah.
And then the conversation is going to be uncomfortable, like most likely. It's just in embracing that piece too.
And is there an age like that should, and I don't want to should, right? Because I know it's different for everyone. Yeah. Is it when your kids come to you and kind of start asking about sex, or is it something that it's like the parents can feel into based on their internet searches, or when does this start to come up as something that is important to take on?
I think it starts as soon as ever. I think it starts as soon as ever kids have language, actually. So, you know, it's not like you sit them down and go, okay, this is sex, or these are your sex organs, but like there's that natural curiosity in life that arrives inside of our children that we see, you know, and especially for siblings, like let's say, for example, they're in the bath and they're like, let me look at your butthole, let me look at your penis, like what's yours doing? That is a moment where some parents would be like, get off, don't touch your brother, move away, just like stop doing that, not appropriate. And it's like, oh, that's weird, Mum. It wasn't weird until you said that.
You know, it wasn't sexual. It
wasn't sexual. It was innocent. It was curious. It was, you know, my natural wonder. And you went ahead and placed the junk on top of that moment. So I think it's young, you know, they could be 3 and 5 years old when those types of things start happening. And language, I suppose, I'm thinking more examples like with my sons, if they're watching something on TV, which they're not usually watching anything on TV, but if there's a moment where, say, me and my boyfriend will be like making out or like having a cuddle, they're naturally curious. They're like watching. And they're like, are you two kissing? And we're like, yeah. You know, and he'll say like, why are you doing that? And he'll be like, because I love your mama. And, okay. You know, one of them, or both of them actually found one of my dildos a couple of months ago. I was just next to my bed and they're like, what's this? And opened the box and it was one of those, the Enjoy Pure one. Do you know?
I love it.
Beautiful, like,
nice deal.
Yeah. And they're like, what's this? And I was like, you know, have a look, have a play. And they're like, whoa, it's heavy, and just like throwing it around on the bed. And then I just noticed myself. I was like, well, there's nothing to do here. There's nothing to like snatch away. There's nothing to say, that's mummy's. Like, stop, don't do that. And he said, what is it for? And I said, it's for touching and pleasuring and loving my body all over to create warmth and happiness in my body. Oh, cool. They put it down and went downstairs. So that's like, wasn't lying. but I didn't say, oh, I masturbate furiously with it, you know. Like,
Two notches too far.
Like, mommy has a lot of orgasms and has a glow after that. And this is how she's such a nice mom.
And this is why I can cook your dinner without, you know, being mad at you. Yes. So it's like, that's another piece. It's like, don't lie, but like find the truth that is age appropriate, that is moment appropriate, that actually like makes sense to them and you. And I felt like there's some examples when I've been able to do that. I don't know. I can't remember if that was the question you were asking, but you were about ages.
Well, no, that was a great way to express that. Though your story reminds me. My friend came out and her toddler was chewing on her anal beads, and she was like, "Oh, not sure we got that." She said they were clean, but she came out. She took a photo and sent it to me because I was dying, and I was like, "Well, they're medical grade silicone, so as long as you wash them, the kid won't kiss it." But I was dying, and so I think that's great. It is making your kids feel comfortable and confident. And if you're not super affectionate, you're a single parent and don't have a partner in the house, you can still talk about what's happening on the TV if they are watching a show. Or because now with the internet, I didn't have that when I was growing up. I had my mom's Kama Sutra book, but
broke into that.
I broke into that, or like my dad's penthouse when I was 4. You know, whoa! But I didn't really know that was bad.
They see things and they get messages all the time. So whether we ignore it or approach it, they're still getting a message, and we may as well put something lovely next to the message or something affirming or safe next to the message, rather than going, oh, we're just going to wait till they get to school, or like lock up and don't say anything, you know. So I think some parents think that when you're not saying much, it's kind of like, oh, they'll get it from somewhere. And it's like, no, I don't want to like wreck them by saying anything. It's like, you're wrecking them anyway, and we're all wrecking everyone anyway. That's another podcast. But
if you don't have a conversation, they're going to go get it from porn and the internet, and that is not great examples of what most parties like.
The kid down the street that's like, guess what I did? Yeah, you want to see something weird? You're like,
what would you say? So earlier when you were talking about the example of or like, you know, because kids also, they're curious, but they do also experience pleasure, you know, and so they'll be like rubbing their genitals on something. April, it talks about rubbing her, like needing to hump her toy bear when she was a kid. And a lot of parents, so there's curiosity, and there's also like kids' desire to explore pleasure. What would you say to a parent that just for the first time has seen their, 4 or 5-year-old starting to touch their genitals or like rub their genitals on the stuffed animal? What would be your advice on how to handle that in a sex positive way?
I would say, firstly, if they're in, if it feels like they're in an appropriate place in the home, so like there's no guests around and they're just in their own beautiful bubble of like enjoyment, just to leave them alone. That's my first thing. Like, just let them have their experience. Some people, like, I have more of a problem with it if there's people over, or, you know, she's doing it in the general store or something. So words of affirmation during the act, like during that pleasure, like, I can see, sweetheart, that you're having such a lovely time with your body. I love you so much. I'm going to ask that you do that in your bedroom, or mummy does that too, but I do it in my bedroom. So let's do it when you get back home. I love you.
That.
That's good.
Oh, that made me so
That's
happy.
Simple.
I love it. Oh my God, that brought so much joy.
It's just putting like lovely language next to it. Instead of like hitting a hand away, you know. You say, deliver the message of responsibility, which is, we don't do this here, but deliver a bit of like good juju at the same time.
That's really good advice. Switching gears, is it okay if we switch gears a little bit? Because some of what we get from a lot of our listeners are about, after you have kids, having your own sexual experiences and still having them be having an active sex life, either with your partner, if you're single, or however that works. So sex after having kids, how can couples or parents, let's say, keep the intimacy alive after they've had kids, especially because they become so low on time and it's quarantine / shelter in place in places. So we would love to hear what you have to say on that.
Yes. A couple of pieces come to mind. And the first one that I'll briefly mention is just like the acknowledgement of how much a woman's body changes after like pushing out a baby, whether vaginally or C-section, like the changes in the pelvic floor, in the pelvis, in the muscles, in the uterus, the bladder, everything. Like, I just think that needs to be acknowledged first and foremost, and way more often. Like, we women put pressure on themselves to like get back on the horse, so to speak. And it's like, babe, can we just take a breath for a second about the changes in your pelvis? So I'd just love for listeners to have that drop for a second. Like, it's okay that you're not actually going to be exactly the same. And with a little good chunk of work, like, you might even be better, which is what I've found with my pelvic floor. So that's the first thing. And to take care of that, like, go to the osteo, go to the myo, go to your physio, like, do the things that your pelvic floor needs to actually properly heal before you start putting pressure on yourself to feel a deep sense of aliveness down there. In terms of the relational bit, the first thing that I think is super important is communication. And I know you've probably, like, this is an answer to so many questions when it comes to sex. But I think that what happens inside of long-term relationships is that we get so comfortable with each other's identities, and like, you do this, you don't do that, I like this, you don't like that. We have these like scripts and these rules that we, after 15 or 10 years together and 2 kids, you think that they're just going to be like that forever. So to come home to one another and like do a deep reintroduction and communicate, like, this is who I am now. And part of this is I actually am not sure what I enjoy sexually anymore. This is who I am. And part of that is that I really would love for us to connect in this way 3 times a week. This is who I am. And I don't really know how I want to connect with you, because actually at the moment, most of the time when you put a hand on my body, like, I feel deeply irritated. Right? Like,
someone listening right now is like,
trigger, like, yes. They're like, absolutely.
but this happens. Totally.
It totally does.
Yeah, it's a hard conversation, but yeah.
Yes. So, but without saying anything, you just like ships in the night, or you're just full of resentment, looking at each other like, you're not instigating, you're not instigating, you're not approaching me, fuck you, you're not approaching me. And
the resentment.
And you go on like that for 3 years, and so you just need to talk first. So that's one thing, 2 things. Yeah. I could keep going.
I thought of what Emily Morse says on Sex with Emily. Which says communication is lubrication. Yeah, which is, and it's, comes first before all things, and a lot of folks aren't necessarily doing, but you're talking about really having those tough conversations. So things have changed. We had kids, now my body's changed, or my desires change, or and let's be honest, you don't have to have kids for things to change. Things are always changing.
Totally.
And this is actually one of the issues in long-term relationships. Even if you don't have kids, they stop getting curious about each other, or they forget that things are constantly changing. Then they get kind of stuck on that. Wait, why? It's not what it was 5 years ago, because it's, or you don't have the
energy though.
Yeah. So I think there's like accepting that piece of that. Yeah, here's change. And I love how you said that, here's who I am today. And I think this is, you probably were insinuating that this is an ongoing conversation. Like, I know people who do relationship check-ins once a month. We're like, all right, where are we at now? Because it's not like same thing with having the birds and the bees conversation with kids. It's not just one conversation. It just keeps on going. So I love that piece. And then, so I guess, so when people are feeling, what are your thoughts on scheduling time? This is a mixed bag for people like, oh, it's not sexy. But I would imagine when you're low on time, you have 1 or more kids, you have these little windows here. It's either like, I guess spontaneous, the window is here, so we go for it. But like, and whatever it is, or do like, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm into scheduling. Like, it's something that I recommend, because when we attach so deeply to spontaneity, I think it's just it's a myth. Like, it's actual bullshit inside of long-term relationships with kids. Like, we want to fall into the Hollywood like makeout session when, the kids are asleep. It's no. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for scheduling. We schedule everything else, anything that we want to experience inside of our week, our month, or our year, we plan. So why on earth do we think that this function should be any different? Just because we're humans and it is a natural function, yes, but actually the way that our sexuality arises in moments inside of our bedroom is not supernatural anymore. Like, it feels really natural when you're in limerence, when you've first like met one another, right? and you're like, there's that magnetism, that's probably the most spontaneous it's ever going to get. Like, beyond that, we need to recreate and like change the narrative around how we approach one another. Mm-hmm. If we decide that we're going to spend our lives with these people, then we need to not be super attached to things like, I need it to be spontaneous and it's not sexy if it's not. Like, that's a bullshit story, I think, mm-hmm. that you're just like wrecking yourself with.
Yeah, kids aside, I agree. Yeah, like whether you have kids or not. I've worked with people before where one or both the partners, timing was issue. They didn't have kids; they're just busy at work, and one was so opposed to scheduling.
People get so caught up in the shoulds of how relationships should be. I'm guilty of that, actually, and thinking like after I went through a divorce that my new relationship, my new partnership should be these things because I'm this mature, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing to myself? I'm boxing myself. And kids aside, my partner has 3 kids, right? And that does have an effect on how we can connect, even though they're older. It still is significant. And so the should, I think, is letting go of that as a huge piece that is important, and creating your own rules, which is what we talk about, and having the conversations that sometimes, as you mentioned, Tamica, aren't easy to have all the time, but letting go of like the bullshit of like, hey, the spontaneity is gone.
And one other thing I like about scheduling is what our friend Lisa, who was a guest on our show, she said her and her partner, they're like super sexy. They're like, she's like 60 and it found the second love of her life, and they have amazing sex all the time. I think I've heard them before. And she says that they schedule sacred intimacy nights. I'll take the word sacred out. It's a little wooey for people. Just intimacy nights, date night. And it doesn't mean penetration. You go in with this open mind and say, where are we at in this moment? Like, okay, in this moment, I want to cuddle, I want to make out, or I want to just like hold your hand, or let's just go for a walk and watch the sunset and then see what happens, instead of, so it still is all about intimacy and connection and sex, but sex, you broaden the definition of sex, and you don't give that up. You're not like, oh, I have a headache, I just want to watch my show. Like, no, this is important as part of the connection and maintenance. So
absolutely.
I love that you said that. I was like, that resonates with me. I don't like goals. I like certain goals, but like having the goal of like must have penis in vagina, or whatever, my pussy on your pussy. So, no.
Totally. Yeah. Super important to get that off. And it reminds me of like these moments often inside couples work is like that they have a different relationship with what intimacy is actually. So someone's like, oh, I thought intimacy is when we could hold hands on the couch and have a cup of tea and chat. And then someone else is using the word intimacy for like, oh, I thought that was penetrative sex for us.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoopsie.
Yeah. Glad we're talking about
that. That's a bit different.
That's what you meant when you said I'm never intimate.
Yeah.
I thought I was.
Oh. I hold your hand all the time.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
No, I want you inside of me.
That's so funny.
That's cute.
So I have a question, because we actually have never talked about this in the show, and you work with polyamorous parents. And so I guess there's probably I'm assuming, and I won't try to assume and project, but I'm assuming there'd be a lot of challenges for poly parents, and also for folks that are swingers or open, etc. So can you talk about maybe some of those challenges and maybe some solutions for those folks out there?
Sure. There are. So firstly, I don't work with lots of polyamorous parents because it's actually a huge, well, at least in our culture here in Australia, having children is a really big barrier to entry for open relating. So
I bet
a
here
lot
too,
of
probably,
like maybe everywhere, but it's like, oh, I don't know how you could do that with kids. It's like, oh, I'd love to open up my marriage, but we have kids. It's like, okay, so we can work at that point in like helping kind of unlock what you subscribe to and surrendering to inside of your beliefs and inside the culture that says that you're not allowed to do a thing. Anyhow, so it's probably mostly about my experience, I suppose. Like, so I have 2 boys, 3 and 6, almost 4 and 6, and a partner of 10 years, and a boyfriend of 2 years, 2.5 years, and wow, it's kind of exhausting, actually. And the most amazing flavor of magic that, I've ever been bold enough to like really opt into with my whole soul and mind and intellect. Dealing with things like our attachment styles, our love languages, communication, obviously, and full transparency with the boys. That, I guess, has been, they're the foundations of what we're able to continue to choose every day, every week. The biggest pieces, I think, are looking after everybody's needs. So constant check-ins, constant conversations, pulse checks. It's like what we kind of lead with, or what I lead with day to day.
Imagine scheduling is important too.
scheduling. Yeah. And like, the time, breaking up the time between my 4 boys is pretty big.
I think it's beautiful though. I just love I'm not saying everyone is a polyamorous or a swinger or any of that stuff at all, to each their own. I think it's beautiful. I'll just generalize this. When young people see complete transparency and role models who are showing love and all the formations that it can come in, and that the diversity of love, and that it's about honesty and respect. And because most kids whether it's in a lot of monogamous households, they don't get that. They still don't get that. So there's something, or people who are getting a divorce, and they have anger and they're hurt about it, but they're actually modeling that now they still love each other perhaps, and that this love has just transformed and transitioned, and you don't have to just exile this person from your life. I mean, again, monogamy chooses that. So it's power. It's a powerful message. So how are your boys in witnessing that? How do you think it's affected them?
They're great. I feel like it was very important for me to not sell the image of like, this is what a successful home looks like. This is perfect. Yeah, there's a mum and a dad and, 2 kids, and you might have a dog, and you live in a house and there's 2 cars. Like, no, that was never, ever going to be what I wanted to model. And I'm like, actually, back to my values and what I believe to be true about the world and love and life is that there is many different types of love, many structures, many ways that we can like be in this culture together. Like in our street, we have a family with 2 dads and a kid. We have a family with 2 mums and 2 kids. And we're over here in the poly house, and, it's like, cool. This is, look at it all. And so I think that they really benefit from having different versions of like the dada archetype, like one of my partners is an artist and he's a musician and he's very like quiet and creative and a dreamer. The other one is very practical. He builds things, he's skateboarding and, with the hands and cooking. And I'm like, wow, there are 2 amazing versions of, the man in inverted commas, like, that they can see, and they do really, really well.
And it also sounds like more love too. There's like more love there. Like, you have like, 2 parents, but now you have like other partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, like, oh, more love. Like, just bring on all the love. Why not?
Right. And like my boyfriend might take the boys so me and my partner can have some time together, or, I'll take the boys. And so the 2 dads, I shouldn't call them both dads, like Jordan, my boyfriend is not the boys' dad, but, so they can hang out together and we all kind of take care of them.
That also goes back to, it takes a village scenario,
That's
right?
It. Yes.
And that's like, how powerful is that to have all of these humans that are showing your children love? And I think it's a massive positive. You get all of these people, and I'm sure it's similar in Australia, but I can talk about in the US, that feel so isolated in parenting and they feel alone. They don't have any support. It's only like the babysitter or the daycare. And then it's exhausting and they're on their own. So I think that's very powerful thing to navigate, of course, to have this possibility when a lot of people are, as you mentioned, are closed off to the idea, probably because it sounds so, I don't want to say new agey, but it's not something that's traditionally supported, right? And if we can shift those paradigms in people's brains, I think that would be helpful. Do you have any, I guess, you gave some great tips already, but for folks out there that want to, perhaps it's been on their mind, they're in agreement, there's, a couple of parents that are wanting to open things up or maybe reach a polyamorous state where it's very organized and scheduled, as Amy loves to say.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for how folks should go about navigating this after kids?
Yeah, I think the first tip is you need to get help. You need to actually get a professional third person to sit with you in a counseling capacity and actually help you open up your thing. The emotional, I don't know if emotional is the word, but the work that it takes to actually crack your brain open and like change the way we've been conditioned, you need like someone else in there with you. That's like a piece of advice. The other thing is go slow. Just like break off little chunks. If you get to the point where you both feel really safe and comfy that like, okay, cool, we can try and open this thing up. It might be like you set your structures and your agreements and your boundaries really solidly and you go, we're going to sit at this for 3 months where, for example, you know, we go on dates with another person that doesn't include like really sex. It doesn't include, you can list the things that whatever you feel safe and comfy in and do that for 3 months. Like go slow is my other piece. And something else popped into my head before. Get help, go slow, and
the honesty seemed like a big part of it too. Transparency, honesty.
Transparency. Yeah. But what I find is that people actually need a third person to help you get to that version of honesty because we show up with our wounds in front of one another. Like, oh, you really want to be with her, don't you? You do. You fucking do. And it's ill. Like no one's going to feel safe to say yes when we're talking like that to our partners. Yeah. But with the counselor or a third person, it's like, all right, you'll list your values together, you'll list your desires, you'll list your ideals. And it's possible if you're willing to do the personal work to like shed your layers and come into a new version of self, don't attach to who you've been. There's a level of newness that's available just on the other side of some bravery and some courage to go, actually, this is what I want. This is my life.
It's like there's so much more aliveness over there when you actually make those choices, and it's a journey to do that work. And on that note, we said about hiring someone,
like a mediator almost.
Well, I was going to say not all therapists or coaches are comfortable talking about sexuality or specifically open relationships, poly relationships, kink relationships. So find someone, you probably like with the work that you do, right? Someone who that's something they're comfortable talking about, and they'll have that either in their bio or you can do a consultation with them.
Totally.
Because I know people that they were seeking that out and they felt like the therapist was judging them. So to really just know that not everyone, I think, what is it? Traditional therapy, the master's degree training, you have to do only 10 hours of sex education,
like the family and
like a marriage and family therapist, something like that. This might be incorrect, but I believe it's very small. And so that means that you go and you start talking about your kinks or like my 2 boyfriends, and they're like, they bring in their own biases. So really to do your work or work with someone like Tamica here, which brings me to how can people work with you and find you? What do you have going on?
Yeah, like you can find me on Facebook. I'm at Neosoma Sex Coach.
And you say that, you spell that out. What is that again?
Yeah, Neosoma, Neo.
Soma,
SOMA, sex coach.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah, Neosoma Sex Coach. And I have a group where I'm working with mums. So, and I suppose like it's not mums exclusively. It's like the kind of, the mum archetype lives in all of us, really. So there are some girls who don't have kids that do arrive with me in that group, and they're really connected to their nurturer, and they know that maybe they want to start thinking about having kids and that kind of thing. So there's a group, and it's called Mama Eros, MAMAEROS, and we'll put the link with this as well. And so you can jump in there, and I do coaching in there, like live coaching and trainings, and we do a book club, and it's really helping mums take the first steps back into their sexuality after birthing babies.
We should get her in touch with Brianna with her podcast.
Yeah.
We'll try to link you.
Sorry. I don't think we're supposed to say her name.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
But her name's on the podcast.
Well, there you go. Postpartum stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that would be a great thing to have you talk to one of my closest friends about. Like, she has a wonderful podcast about postpartum stories.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, yeah, you would be a great contact for her. And I think that what you're doing is incredible, Tamica. And I really hope that your 2 little boys know how amazing their mama is. And it seems like they've got really good guide on their journey of life. As I
thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
And thank you for sharing your wisdom and your work with us and our listeners. I know they're going to love this. You cracked open some things that we haven't touched on yet. So this was really, really great. And I love your delivery and your advice is wonderful. So I'm not a parent, but I appreciate it. My dog, maybe I can be a dog mom and have all of those things.
She's stepmom-ish, so
exactly.
Momish,
we're all in community with children somewhere. Aunties, uncles, caregivers,
I'm an auntie for sure. Yeah. Well, we hope that you have a beautiful tomorrow, because you're in our tomorrow right now. You're in the future. Yes. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining Tamica and Amy and myself for this bonus ad-free episode. So I'm not going to tell you what to do or links to click other than go check out Tamica's, her link that will be on our website as well. And I will ask you, though, 5 stars on iTunes, because we love you. I read them. Amy reads them. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we cry.
Sometimes we make funny videos.
Sometimes we make funny videos. So check out our Instagram if you haven't. But we love each and every one of you shameless sex revolutionaries. We'll see you next Tuesday and occasionally on Friday. Ciao for now.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.